You're listening to REI USA Podcast, your prime resource for genuine real estate growth. If you want to jumpstart your real estate career, whether in active or passive investing, this is the right show for you. Join professional home renovator Stacey Rossetti as she talks to REI USA teachers and expert investors willing to share their tips and tricks to get started in investing, sharing actionable advice in every area of real estate, all while putting legality, habitability, and safety above everything else. Combine their unparalleled advice with your strong drive for success, and that incredible real estate fortune will be yours. Now, here's your host, Stacey.
Rachel teaches luxury short-term rental. She's going to hang out with us and teach us all she knows about this. And then you get to come and hang out with her. She'll let you know when as well. So thank you for coming and teaching with us weekend. All right.
Awesome. So everyone, I am super, super excited to be here with you today. This is one of my favorite seminars that we have on an annual basis. So we're highlighting women in real estate, super, super stoked. And nothing gives me more joy than to show you guys what I've been up to over the last few years. So my name is Rachel. I am a healthcare professional by day, a luxury short-term rental investor by night, operating out of Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania. And one of the things I get asked on a day-to-day basis in terms of short-term rentals is where to invest. How do I figure out how much a property will make? And so I thought today I would share with you my 4 pillars to growing a wildly profitable luxury short-term rental portfolio. So welcome, welcome. I think I'm one of the last speakers of today. So I hope that you could just kind of shake off any fatigue so that we can get going. I want this to be as interactive as possible. So Stacey, if it's okay with you, I do not mind taking questions in between because I'm sure there are questions that are going to come up. You're going to see a little bit of my analytical side during today's talk. So I don't want to leave anyone behind. So feel free to go into the Q&A and ask your questions there. And I am more than happy to pause and take those.
Got it.
Awesome. Okay. So here are my 4 pillars. I'm just going to give you an overview and then we're going to deep dive. So this is essentially our agenda. So my 4 pillars of growing a wildly profitable luxury short-term rental portfolio is I do grassroots research, and I'll show you what that looks like. I leverage, and this is something that Stacey knows about me, I leverage the out of my W-2 to make sure that I can get cheap money, very, very affordable loans. Excuse me. I think it's really important to know your numbers. If you're not investing correctly, if you don't understand your numbers, you may find yourself on the unfavorable side of the deal. And then understanding my exit strategies, even before I go in, what is the liquidation process going to look like before going in and putting money down? That is very key because what that helps you to understand is if you're going to exit, and there are different ways to exit when we're talking about short-term rentals, an exit strategy can actually be a long-term rental. So we'll talk about that as well. All right, let's talk about grassroots research. What I love about short-term rentals, Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, is all the information is out there for the world to see. There's no guessing. Well, what is, how much would it cost to rent a property, a nightly rate in Atlanta in September, right? Go in there, like legit go in there as though you are an end user, as though you are a guest. And you can test some things out. That's exactly where I started before I started utilizing more sophisticated data tools. You can actually do your own grassroots research. So if I'm looking to break into a new market, I'm not familiar with it. I don't necessarily want to pay for the data tools to go in there to, go all in and deep dive yet. I use grassroots research. I'll go into a neighborhood in, say, Montana and pretend like I'm going to book. And if I see for the span of 3 or 4 days during the weekday versus during the weekend, here are the prices that they're demanding. That is fairly straightforward to do. So I implore you to use your grassroots research using Airbnb and using Vrbo. That is a great way to start. Other OTAs, I mentioned other OTAs. So So OTAs are online travel agencies. So other online travel agencies are booking.com. That's a third big one. So Airbnb is an OTA, Vrbo is an OTA online travel agency. Booking.com is one as well. Expedia, Travelocity, all of those are also OTAs, okay? So here's an example. Okay, so if you are looking, this is Black Bear Mountain, 70-mile view, 1 hour from Atlanta. So this area, it's kind of remote. You can go in, do a grassroots research. You see that for that time period that I selected, they're charging about $200 a night. Okay, a little less, 131, 183. This is something you can do right here, right now. So I implore you, do your grassroots research. It's a great way to get started. It's something that I think is pretty obvious, but I want to put it out there because not a lot of people are doing that grassroots research when they're first getting started. So definitely do your grassroots research. As you can see here, here's some, not only does it give me the average nightly rate, right? It gives me this density. Like, look at all these short-term rentals. Look at all these Airbnb listings in this area, right? And so this is actually not Airbnb. This is actually Vrbo. You see, here's the Airbnb listing and here's the Vrbo listing, right? So what that tells me is there is a demand in that area. There's quite a few short-term rentals in that area. So it might be an area worth looking into if I'm interested. So definitely do your grassroots research. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is leveraging. All right. So I know that a lot of times when we decide to be entrepreneurs, some of us decide, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just burn all the boats, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I have found that, and I don't know, maybe it's a crutch or maybe it's an advantage, but I found that utilizing my W-2 and the work history has given me an opportunity to get some of the best loans possible. 5% down, 10% down, 3.5% down. At times, it just depends on the lender and how they determine, is the home a second home loan? Is it different from your primary home? And so on and so forth. So I leverage my W-2, which is a little bit of a contrarian because I know a lot of us investors, we're small business owners and we don't always have a W-2, but I encourage you, if you have a W-2, leverage your W-2 because it gives you an opportunity to use some of these I would call them cheaper loan options, but I'm not an attorney and I'm not a financial advisor or an accountant, so I can't really give you financial advice. Definitely reach out to those that are on your team, whoever gives you counsel for your finances to ensure that that is a good idea if you have a W-2. But this is what I've done. I've leveraged other people's money in terms of second home loans. I've leveraged commercial loans such as the DSCR loans, which is the debt service coverage ratio loans, in order to get 15% down as well. I know that we have hard money lenders that we've spoken to. We may leverage those as well. And arbitrage is another way of leverage. So this is when you're leveraging other people's property, so other people's homes. And so this is something that I found to be a really big trend in 2021, especially when the housing market, the prices went all the way up and we weren't necessarily purchasing homes month after month after month. So what we did was we transitioned to an arbitrage model where we rented. So it's a rent to rent or in some areas it's called a sublease or a master lease or so rent to rent, sublet or sublease or a master lease where we hold the property in our business's name in order to then rent it out to travelers who are coming to the area. So the owner is still getting their monthly rent. They're fully aware of the business that we are running in the property, and we give them their monthly rent scheduled to automatically pay them on a month-to-month basis on time. However, the property gets furnished by us. The cleaners come in 6-7 times a month. So the property is in tip-top shape. Okay. And so the owners love us because how often do you go back to your single family home or your property after 1, 2, or 3 years of a tenant living there, and you often have to do a gut job because it wasn't the most well cared for, right? That happens sometimes. But in order for me to stay in business and to remain a 5-star host and to continue to provide those 5-star accommodations for my guests, that property needs to be in showroom ready each and every time. So whenever the owner decides, you know what, let me just go ahead and check in on this property and it's vague, it's, there's no occupant there at the moment, they go in and check. The property is in showroom ready, right? It's in perfect shape. So we definitely love working with investors, us being investors ourselves. They understand what it is that we're doing. And we leverage that. This is our second pillar. We leverage by using other people's money, whether it's second home loans, debt service coverage ratio loans, as well as other people's properties as well. So anyway, anything from single family homes, multifamily apartments, and so on and so forth. So I just covered 2 pillars. I just wanted to see if there are any questions before I move on to my know your numbers pillar.
Yes, there's one question.
Yeah. What's the question?
What are the qualifications for, and how does one apply for a DSCR loan?
Oh, that's a great question. So we have different DSCR lenders out there. I would say what's interesting about DSCR loans, debt service coverage ratio loans, is that it's not your Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. So it's not going to have the same qualifications as those institutional lenders. So I'm really happy you asked that question, because that is a great question. Each DSCR retail lender is going to have its different qualifications. For example, if you want the best of the best DSCR loan, meaning if you want the 15% down, which is going to be the lowest possible, some are 20% down, 25% down, 30% down, you'll still get that loan, but it's going to be, the LTV is going to be different, right? So let's start with 30% down. If you're going to get a 30% down, as long as you do not have a really derogatory credit score, I think, and then the property can generate revenue, you can get that 30% down, right? So that's the lowest hanging fruit. And what DSCR is looking for, they're not looking for your income. They're more so looking for the income potential of the property. Okay. And at that point, say you don't have any short-term rental experience and you have a decent credit score. It's not the top credit score. You're a small business owner, 30%, but you have your 30% down, you can get the DSCR loans. Okay. So I wanted to start there. However, if you're looking for the prime everything, the 15% down, the lowest possible interest rate, and the interest rate is going to be higher than your Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. It's going to be anywhere from, I want to say 4.5% to 5% is the interest rate. So it is higher. So you want to leverage the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac if you can, if it's, appropriate for your finances. But the best ideal client for a DSCR loan, like to get the best DSCR, here's what I've seen, and don't quote me because each lender is different. If you have 1 year of Airbnb hosting experience, they will take the revenue from your short-term rentals, and it has to be a 1-to-1 ratio, and then they will cover the loan at 15%. Also, your credit has to be a 720 or higher, and then you can get that 15%. So you being an Airbnb host, they will take your Airbnb revenue. So typically, with commercial lenders or hard money lenders, they want to see that the house is going to rent for the monthly mortgage or for the monthly amount that you owe them. However, with DSCR loans from specific lenders, they will take your Airbnb or your short-term rental revenue, which is usually about 3x a long-term rental revenue. I hope that kind of answers your question. I went all the way around the world and back. Does that kind of make sense? Here's the deal. Recently, I interviewed a FHA loan person, and then I interviewed a DSCR loan person, because these are the questions that we're getting all the time. Like, what if this is my situation? What if everyone's situation is a little bit different, right? So yeah, that's a good question. I'm sure I didn't cover all of the situations, but that's more of a high level. Know your numbers. Know your numbers. I'm sure Stacy is already, she talks about this every week when she's doing her live webinar. Knowing your numbers and understanding your after ARV and all of that is really important. So for this specifically, for short-term rentals, I want to show you the tools that I use in order to know my numbers. Okay. Let me show you my tools. These are my 4 favorite tools that I utilize in order to make sure that I know my numbers, in order to make sure that it makes sense. And so I'll just read them off to you, and I'll give you a little bit of a visual screenshot of what it looks like and what it is that I'm drawing out of there is the most important data in order for me to make an informed decision. Okay, so my 4 favorite tools are AirDNA, Data Rabu, Price Labs, and Rentometer. And we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about it. All right. So airdna.co, you can go right now and search airdna.co/Airbnb calculator, or you can even search Airbnb Rentalizer in Google. Airbnb Rentalizer in Google. Once you search, it may ask you for your name, your password. Just stick to the free version for now. But once you search, what you want to do is enter the address, and I'm trying to use my mouse, enter the address, enter the number of bedrooms the property has. And so I would say, give this a go. Enter an address such as you can do your home address. You can do an address on a property that you found from, say, a wholesaler. They sent you the property. You can just plug and chug that address in there, right? Then enter the number of bedrooms, enter the number of bathrooms, and enter your number of expected guests. And here's how we know the number of guests we expect. My rule of thumb is about 3 guests per bathroom. So say it's a 10-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms, right? Yeah, I've seen weird things like that before. 2 bathrooms. Typically, I would say it would be 3 guests per bathroom. So that property, I would feel comfortable putting in 6 guests. Okay. But since there are so many homes, I may up it to 4 guests per bathroom because there's going to be a lot of real estate there. And so people can roam, especially if it's a beachfront property. They're probably going to be spending more time outside than in the property. So the number of bathrooms is what determines my number of guests. So my rule of thumb is 3 to 4 guests per bathroom. So that's going to help you fill out this 3rd field here, right? The number of guests. This is a property I just Googled, a property in Vail, Colorado. So what you're seeing here is the annual revenue for all of the properties in Vail, Colorado, whether it's a condo with a ski lift right, there, or a house that's all the way remote, nowhere near amenities, and it's 2 bedrooms. So as long as it's a 2-bedroom, it can sleep 6. This is the average revenue. This is the average daily rate. But honestly, guys, and I want you to come back to me if you're multitasking, come back to me. This is the most important thing for me, is the occupancy rate. Okay. This is the most important to me. And all I'm looking to see using this particular tool, the free AirDNA Rentalizer, is there a demand in there? Are you people even coming to that area? And my secret sauce number is 50% or more. If it's 50% or more, I know that there's a demand. That's all it's telling me. It's not telling me what my property is going to generate in terms of occupancy, because I can generate as little as 65% is what, we generate for the bigger properties, or as small as 90% is what we generate for the smaller properties, right? So 50% or higher tells me one thing, there are people traveling to the area. So I had a mentee of mine with a beautiful home. Where was this? This was in Georgia. They found this beautiful home, newly renovated. I even went to take a peek at it. I was like, wow, this is pretty. There were some gaps in the renovation, but it was a really great home. 7 bedroom on like half an acre. And it was near Hogansville, Georgia. And so when we pulled the occupancy rate, it was at 23%. So my recommendation was absolutely not, no. We're not going to move forward. And my recommendation was that this would be called a high risk investment for short-term rentals. Because at 23%, it's really like who even is coming here, right? Who even is, what is the drive? What is the purpose for guests to come and visit this area? And there wasn't much purpose. There wasn't much drive. And so my recommendation was that this is a very high risk. You can move forward, but know that this is high risk. And I was really, really concerned. And so we did not move forward with that investment. So the occupancy rate, I don't mean to go on and on and on about it, but I kind of do because it is that important. All right. So the next tool that I like to use, and by the way, guys, I'm only sharing with you tools that are free or freemium. For the most part, there's one that does cost, but in general, they're free. And what I love is when you have one tool that kind of validates the other tool, but if they kind of are in conflict with one another, I like to use a third tool kind of as a tiebreaker, so to speak. So my next tool that I love is called Data Rabu. This is another free tool. And although, we looked in the picture a little bit earlier to see globally what the occupancy rate is, what the general annual revenue is for an entire area within a certain mileage, Data Rabu kind of helps us to get laser focused, right? So I can go as little as, okay, my subject property, 0.1 miles away from it, 0.2 miles away, 0.3. What is the revenue being generated? What is the occupancy? What is the daily rate for those properties? And I think that's very important to get really, really laser focused once you have that addressed, to also plug it into Data Rabu, because you don't want necessarily the revenue scores for an entire city. You want the revenue scores for walking distance from your property so that you can really get laser focused. So to me, Data Rabu is a great way to zoom in. And again, it's another free tool. It is a great, great tool, and I love using it as well. I use it on a daily basis if I'm looking at property. And another pointer also is if you go to the arrows, it will send you to the Airbnb listing, and also it will share with you what the calendars are looking like for all of the potential properties that are in the surrounding area. It'll show you what's blocked on the calendar. It'll show you the rates on a day-to-day basis. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday versus Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and so on and so forth. And another thing that I like to use with this tool is to identify, is the operator using some type of dynamic pricing tool, or are they just pricing it $100 a night? And then on the weekends, it's $200 a night. So when I see the fluctuations such as 137, 183, just random pricing, I'm like, okay, this is someone who knows what they're doing because they're utilizing a dynamic pricing tool. So just definitely a tool worth looking into. Again, data.rabu.com, just another free tool. All right, so Price Labs is the final short-term rental tool that I'll share with you today. Matchvisor is another one too. So Matchvisor has a freemium version. I think Price Labs has a freemium version, but to get more robust information, and I call it freemium, right? Because it's really, you get a little bit, but then you pay, you get more. I use Price Labs kind of as a tiebreaker. If AirDNA is telling me one thing, and then Data Rabu is telling me the total opposite, then I may, enlist a third because I need a tiebreaker to give me a little bit more information before moving forward. So Price Labs originally, they are actually the dynamic pricing tool that I use for all of my properties. So I'm just letting you know, I'm spilling the tea. So dynamic pricing, you'll see if you look on any of my Airbnbs or short-term rentals, there are no two prices that are the same. So it takes into advantage, or it takes into consideration holidays, events that are going on, hotel occupancy rates, hotel vacancies, neighboring property vacancies, neighboring property, occupancy, in order to price my property on a day-to-day basis. The algorithm does that on a day-to-day basis for me. Okay, I'm getting some kind of noise in the background. All right. So the next tool I want to share with you is something, and you'll see this. I'm going to speak about this twice. So I may just go ahead and share it, rentometer.com, and then I'll speak about it. Well, let me tell you about it right now. So many of you should know about this tool. Rentometer.com is a tool that I use whenever I go into investing into short-term rentals. I want to know that I have an exit strategy. Say something goes really, really wrong, unfortunately, and I can no longer operate as a short-term rental investor with that property. And rather, I would need to pivot into a long-term rental. So as I'm analyzing the property for short-term rentals, believe that I'm also analyzing it for long-term as well. Okay.
What kind of insurance do you use for properties? I understand some of the larger companies don't like to insure Airbnb properties.
Yeah, I use proper insurance. And then for the ones that we are arbitraging, I use proper insurance. And for the ones that we own, I use a vacation rental insurance. So you can ask your insurer if they have a vacation rental insurance and use that. So that's what's pretty much worked for us. It's like a Lloyd of London something. Yeah.
Lloyd of London does everything because they also do storage. We're like, yeah, we'll insure it. No big deal.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, Eric is asking, do the free sites you touched on have data for medium-term rentals, 30 days or more?
They don't really identify them because it really depends, right? So if you're an operator and you're doing both short-term rental and medium-term rental, okay, yeah, so that's a great question. It does require a little bit of grassroots because most operators, I would say, most who are short-term rentals are also short-term rental hosts, are also medium-term rental hosts, right? So it really depends. You can look at the property and you can identify, especially on data.rabu, if the property is booked for the next 30, 60, or 90 days, like 100% booked, most likely that property is a medium-term rental, or maybe they've taken the listing down for a number of months for whatever reason. Okay. So if it's locked for 30, 60, or 90 days, I would assume that property, and if it's generating revenue, that property is a medium-term rental, and you can go ahead and look at those numbers and identify them that way. But as far as a database that's going to tell you in terms of these are just medium-term rentals, I haven't seen that come across yet. Not to say that won't come up in the future because Airbnb short-term rentals, medium-term rentals are so hot. There's always a new data tool out there. And I'm a data girl. I get really excited when I see spreadsheets, believe it or not. So I have subscriptions to 20 other tools as well. Airbitics, Key Data, as well as even apartment rental data, commercial property data. But what I want to share with you all here today, these are the bare minimum tools that you need to make a decision. You don't need anything else. Any of the other stuff I found to be lacking, and I found it to be noise. I'm not telling you that these are absolutely perfect, right? But these are more than enough to help you make an informed decision. And so later on, if there's another tool that comes to market that is going to show us a little bit more about medium-term rentals, I'm here for it. But I'm finding that data in Rentometer. I'm finding that data in AirDNA, as well as data.rabu. And between short-term rentals and Rentometer, the medium-term rentals kind of fall somewhere in between. And the other challenge you're going to find with medium-term rentals is sometimes you go off platform. So for example, if someone stays with me for 2 weeks and they say, well, their house is being, unfortunately, their house, and I have someone like that, their house caught on fire, and they are going to be staying with me for 2 weeks while they renovate, right? You all know it's not going to take 2 weeks to do anything. You can't put in a faucet in 2 weeks these days, I feel like. So unfortunately for them, it's taken much, much, much longer. So the first 2 weeks, that data is captured on Airbnb, but thereafter they did a direct booking with me. In other words, we went off platform, we dealt directly with the insurance company and they booked directly with me. They have a signed lease. And so they've been going month by month by month. So to say that that information, those are 30-day, they go 30 days at a time with a deposit in the beginning, and all of that is spelled out. But where would you really capture that information? And I'm not a unique situation, right? This happens a lot where once you've served the guests, they're your guests, you end up going off platform afterwards, having a lease in place, a medium-term lease in place, and then that data kind of falls off, right? So the cashier's check is coming directly to me. ALE Solutions is one of the companies that we work with. Signature Housing is another company. They will send me a cashier's check. So AirDNA, Data Rabu, none of those platforms will capture that revenue on a month-to-month basis. So I wouldn't count on any platform per se for medium-term rentals. You can kind of make some general extrapolations based on that. So I hope I kind of went all around the world and back, but I hope that offered some value. Stacy, do we have a few more? I see some things in the chat. I'll let you let me know.
No, we answered everything so far. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So with that being said, guys, so we've talked about tools, data tools. I can talk data tools all day, but it can get a little boring. Some people have told me my little data tools are boring, but I love it because knowing your numbers is so important. All right. So exit strategies. Let's talk a little bit about exit strategies. You want to begin with the end in mind, right? We always hope for the best, but we want to mitigate risk. We want to make sure, okay, so if something goes down, what do I do? And again, you will see the slide again, the rentometer. Rentometer is your long-term rental tool. This is a tool, again, it's freemium. I think it lets you analyze 3 properties for free. And afterwards, it wants a little monthly subscription. Nothing too earth-shattering. We want to say something around maybe $30 a month or less, something around thereabouts. But if you're investing in real estate, $30 less is definitely worth the investment to make sure you're calculating your numbers and your expectations are set correctly. And so this is your an estimate of what the property would generate as a long-term rental, okay? Because if you are in a situation where you start off as a short-term rental, the property then needs to be converted to a long-term rental, you want to make sure you're ready. And the other way I look at exit strategies is, of course, liquidation. In other words, selling off the property. So I am of the mindset, I love equity and I love cash flow. I love both of those things. And so for me to be excited about a deal and for me to sign the papers, I want to see equity and I want to see cash flow. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about one of the biggest risks and a trend that we're seeing right now, and we will continue to see because Airbnb is hot, guys. Airbnb is hot. Short-term rentals are hot. Vrbo, it's hot. It's a big deal. And unfortunately, what we are seeing is that the hotel industry took a big hit, $1 billion hit, $1 billion of losses in 2021. Okay, we've seen the receipts. So the revenue the hotel industry was expecting to make, they did not make. So what does that mean? What it means is for the municipalities, for the cities, for the counties, that money they were counting on, right? The transient occupancy taxes, that revenue, they didn't get all the revenue that they wanted or they needed to get in order to keep their city up and running. So it would behoove them to create legislation, regulations, ordinances in order to connect these funds from us Airbnb operators. And trust me, I pay my fair share. And in order to collect correctly, they need to create ordinances. Okay. So I am optimistic. I believe Airbnb, short-term rentals, Vrbo, the vacation rental industry is here to stay. We are a money generating industry. So it's here to stay. Every city, county, municipality, township, parish, they want their fair share, and that's fine. But in order to collect, they need to create ordinances. So before you purchase a property, before you walk into anything, I need you to make sure you're looking at the ordinances, okay? Because in some areas, it in fact is banned. but some areas it is allowed, or some areas there's nothing. There are no rules there yet, right? But there will be. That is going to be a trend. So you need to understand at a high level what these rules mean. Okay. So number one, if you don't know at all whether or not a property or a city or a county or municipality has a ban or has short-term rentals are allowable, here is my framework. This is the step. This is the workflow. This is what I actually do specifically. And I just wanted to map it out for you. You don't need to do more than this, but this is what you do. You go to Google, right? Dr. Google, and you research short-term rental ordinance or regulations. Okay. Short-term rental ordinances, short-term rental regulations, Clayton County, short-term rental regulations, Fayette County, Georgia, short-term rental regulations, Coweta County, Georgia, whatever county you're interested in, you look it up. And so what you're looking for, you're not looking for articles or this party happened here or that party, something, slander, all of that is going to be out there. But what you're really looking for is what is called the Municode. Okay. Because what the Municode does is it spells out the ordinance for you. Next step is if there's no Municode, and unfortunately, a lot of times you're going to find there's no Municode, right? There's no municipality code. So you need to do a little bit of digging. And the way to do that is you call the county clerk's office. And I right here, call the county clerk's office. Okay. So once you call the county clerk's office, you just ask the same question. Hey, what is the short-term rental ordinance for such and such county? Okay. And they're going to tell you, whether there is, or if there isn't, they're going to tell you there aren't any. And the next question I want you to ask, well, is there anything in draft? Okay. There's a lot of things in draft. And so once you ask if there's anything in draft, you're going to want them to send you a copy of that via email. Now, if they say, and then you can stop there if you're comfortable. Yeah, that's exactly what I need. That's enough information for me. I'm good to go. However, if they say, nope, they don't have anything in draft, next step, I want you to go to the zoning department. And so it can be named different things in different locations, right? So I think building and maintenance is one in some of the counties. So the zoning department is who you want. And you ask them, what is the ordinance for short-term rentals, or what are the regulations for short-term rentals in such and such county? Okay. And so you want that information from them because they're the ones who are kind of the code people, the code enforcers. And so I'm not a big fan, and I apologize if anyone here is here for zoning. Sometimes I feel like they do things under the cloak of darkness and you just find out about it the next day. It's like, wait a minute, no one spoke about this. So you want to ask them, and they're a little bit more, I would say, they're not the most warm and fuzzy. Is that a good way of saying it? And so you may, encounter someone, who is a little bit tougher on the other side of the phone. But remember, you have rights. Okay. You're a citizen. Say, what's your address? What's this? What's that? If it gets to that type of like a little bit more feisty, I would say, hey, I'm a citizen. I just am asking about the ordinances. You don't need to know my address. You don't need to know my name. You don't need to know. I'm a paying citizen. And you just kind of recenter the conversation to get what it is that you need. Okay. So that's my recommendations because I've encountered, I don't know if it's a badge thing, but sometimes they can get a little dicey and a little bit feisty. And so we want to go ahead and recenter and get them, get them to give us the information we need without indicting us, so to speak. All right. So if they've got nothing, he or she has nothing for you, then I would look at newspaper articles just to see if, Representative so-and-so is looking to bring forth this new, ordinance or bring forth this new policy or something like that. You're looking for that type of news in order to stay abreast of what's going on. Several of my mentees, they found out that, there's a new code coming out through the news and something general like that. So unfortunately, that happens from time to time. Okay. And so it's a little controversial that I put the HOA here. Sometimes I want to put it in the beginning. Sometimes I want to put it in the end. But here it is. It's here this time. And so if you are dealing with a property that has an HOA, you want to look at the CC&R, which is the covenants And I always draw a blank on the the CCNR, but the CCNR. And so here's my thoughts about HOA. Previously, I was the just say no to HOA girl, like anti-HOA under any circumstances, but I have updated my mindset and my process. So I'm still a just say no to HOAs if you're in a suburban area. However, if you are fortunate enough to be buying a property in a really nice resort, yes, they're going to have an HOA. So in order to select the property properly, you want to make sure that most of the properties in that resort type HOA are short-term rentals. So if 50% of the properties or greater are short-term rentals, vacation rentals, I'm okay with an HOA only under that circumstance, because a lot of times when it's in a resort, you have an HOA, and I have a property like this. You have an HOA there primarily to collect the fees for really nice amenities, whether it's a boat slip, whether it's a hot tub or a pool, or a slide, something or another, you know. The HOA is there really to collect those fees so that everyone can get that shared amenity expense, but not really there to kind of boss you around. And if anyone here is an HOA manager, I humbly apologize. But I'm a just say no to HOA girl, unless, number one, it's in a resort community where there are really nice amenities and we're sharing the cost. And number two, it has to have both. And number two, that property is amongst 50% of others who are also short-term rentals. Okay. You want that to be the business of that area. All right. So if you've done all of these steps, you see no ordinances, just stop there. You can go ahead and operate as a short-term rental. And so be very, very clear about it. I want to go ahead and highlight one more thing about the zoning. Just because my house here can be a short-term rental doesn't mean my neighbor can be a short-term rental. And the reason I want to bring it up is because I have students that come to me and they're like, well, there's 100 other short-term rentals in this area. Surely I could be one. Not necessarily. Number one, they could be operating illegally, right? And number two, is your property zoned correctly? So I had a client, their property, was near others that were short-term rental in Pennsylvania. They were about to close. They were 4 days from closing. And I looked, and they were asking me to manage, because I helped manage also. I looked up the zoning. I said, no, this particular zone, it was like R3. This particular zoning, it's banned. And he says, no. My realtor said, yes, I can, operate as a short-term rental. It was banned. R3 for that specific county was banned. It was supposed to be RS was allowed, but R3 was banned. But that property was next to a couple of RS properties based on the zoning. And so the realtor, honest mistake, thought, oh, surely it should be fine. But the code clearly states R3 is not zoned for short-term rentals. They're not allowed to be a short-term rental. And so the wife was crying, and she was like, we almost took our whole life savings to try this venture, and we would have been in big trouble, right? So definitely, the zoning is important. That specific property address, you want to make sure it's not necessarily on a banned list or anything like that, because it would impact. And this is not to discourage you at all, I promise, because honestly, short-term rentals are here to stay. Even some of the states that do have the bans, a couple of states have come back. I want to say in Michigan, I think is one. Don't quote me, but there's that state is saying banning short-term rentals. There's a ban on banning short-term. You are not allowed to ban short-term rentals. So it has to do with property rights, homeowner rights. So there's this tug of war out there now. That's why I think it's really important to kind of understand what your ordinances are, your regulations are. Get an attorney who's, well-versed in real estate that can help you also as you walk this path if you're not sure. I have another student who actually purchased a property with an HOA. And she says, don't worry, this is in a vacation rental area. We should be good to go. After seeing her first guest, she got a letter from the HOA And now we're involving attorneys and everything. They're changing the covenants so that they can ban her from, operating as a short-term rental. And I know this sounds like doom and gloom. Oh, Rachel, you're telling us not to do it. I don't want that to be the takeaway message, because there are so many places you can operate. I just want to help you avoid pitfalls because, they're out there. There are so many places you can invest and so many places you can operate. I don't want you to end up in an area where you just purchase. And when you purchase, guys, when it's short-term rentals, you're not purchasing and slapping anything in there. You're actually putting some nice things, right? Investing. I had another student who put $100,000 worth into her short-term rental in Austin. I was like, Austin. After her first booking, the guests didn't even get there. She got shut down. So again, I just don't want that to happen to you. So if there's a ban and if there's an argument between the state and the city and all of that, well, the city says it's okay, but the state says it's okay. The city says it's not, which is what I'm encountering in Austin. Don't do it, because although by law, you're okay to do it, when your guest gets there and the code enforcement knocks on the door with their badge, it just it's not a good feeling. You can yell at them and they have to get off your property and all of that. But that guest just had a really tough experience, right? Because no one wants anyone knocking on their door. So with that being said, I know it sounds again like I just want to warn you. I just want to make sure that, you're operating in the right places, because there is a lot of money to be made, but I don't want you to end up encountering some of those roadblocks. So these are the 3 top cities that I'm investing in next. Gulf Shores, Alabama. And again, not everywhere in Gulf Shores. Above the highway, it's banned. Below the highway, it's okay. So just knowing where you can operate. Broken Bow, Oklahoma, one of the only few places that I can find a property right now for under $600K that will still generate a 6-figure income. Oh, and I don't know if I mentioned this. My whole philosophy is, how do I own the fewest number of properties that generate the highest profitability? So yes, I pay a little bit more for my properties. I'm the we buy pretty houses girl. So my stuff is going to be a little bit more expensive, but it generates, on average 6-figure revenue annually. And so I don't necessarily need 200 doors, 2 or 3 doors, I think will make all the difference in the world when it comes to short-term rentals. If you're really being minimalistic and trying to really target those numbers, like knowing your numbers. And the Texas Gulf Coast. So we're looking at Cinnamon Shore. We're looking at Crystal Beach. So those are the areas these are my top next cities. I'm throwing offers out there and we'll see if something sticks. We're actually building in Rosemary Beach, Florida as well. So we're looking at, leveraging new construction. New construction is definitely a trend that we know is going to be here to stay in 2022. So with that being said, again, my name is Rachel. Oh my goodness, I love sharing with you today. You can find me every Tuesday at REI USA. 9 a.m. Eastern, every 4th Tuesday, not every Tuesday, correction. Every 4th Tuesday, 9 a.m. Eastern, where I am hosting the luxury short-term rentals, Q&A, mentorship, coaching, training. So bring your questions there if you have any. I love connecting with the folks there. And I did spill 3 of my top cities, but I do have a freebie for you. Hey, Stacey, is it okay if I share this freebie, my top 75 list?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So if you go to shorttermgems.com/best2021, this is my top 75 US cities with the highest profitability for short-term rental investing. So 75 cities, guys. If anyone's asking, where's Rachel investing? It's one of these 75 cities. So I'm just kind of globe trotting or United States trotting, going from place to place, finding properties that are within the budget of the month, right? And then I invest that way. And so that is all I have for you today, guys.
Thank you for listening to this episode of REI USA. Let these golden pieces of advice clear your path towards thriving real estate success and start making those amazing financial opportunities work for you. If you liked this episode and want to get more of these valuable secrets, be sure to subscribe to the show at www.rei-usa.com. Leave a rating too and share with your friends. Until next time.